3, 2, 1.
Okay, welcome to the program. It's August the 7th. You're with the Editor-in-Chief live with Lester's Oil, your multi-ingredient omega-3 healthy aging supplement backed by thousands of satisfied customers. Get the benefits of 6 supplements in one capsule to support joint, heart and brain health. Take as directed, read the label, and it's about health. Auckland, very good morning to you. I am Duncan Garner. Welcome to the program, and we look at the worldwide stock market crash, the fall, the tumble, whatever which way you want to call it or describe it. And what does this mean for your KiwiSaver balance? So we'll look at this. Hold tight, don't panic. Okay, that's basically the best advice. Also look at unemployment numbers as well coming up. That Lester's Oil might be the only thing that actually can save you. And if you look at the health sector, because the health system right now is teetering. We'll find out how the ambulance officer strike affects you. And man, they are talking about taking themselves off the road. So what does it mean for you? Do you have to take yourself to hospital? I'll tell you why Shane Reti should be sacked as well. I'm right into him. And we will meet the Kiwi farm swappers who took on a 200,000 hectare farm in the outback, and they swapped it for their one in New Zealand. And they love it. Absolutely love it. There's only 7 paddocks, though, amongst 200,000 hectares. Amazing. Jump on TikTok, YouTube. It's all there. Right now, it's news time. Here's MediaWorks Deputy News Editor. It is Grace Cocker. Very good morning.
New Zealanders are being urged to register on Safe Travel if heading to the UK. It comes amid a week of far-right rioting, with more planned for tonight. England's top prosecutor is considering charging some rioters with terrorism offences. Health New Zealand's been challenged to review its decision-making process. It has reversed a decision to deny early access to cancer drug Keytruda. Patient Voice Aotearoa's Malcolm Mulholland says it's a disgrace.
I would love to know who was involved, how the decision came about, so they can learn from this massive mistake and not have egg on their face.
People are being urged against working in Indonesia's Papua. New Zealand pilot Glenn Conning has been killed by rebels, and fellow Kiwi Philip Mertens is still being held captive by the same group. Former negotiator Damien Kingsbury says it's not safe.
People who go there to work for Indonesian companies will be seen as the enemy, and as a consequence they will be targeted.
A straight-shooting former football coach has been shoulder-tapped as Kamala Harris's running mate. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz popularised the word weird to describe Republicans. This Democrat strategist told CNN he just says what everyone's thinking.
He speaks like every person. Most Americans sit back and watch some of the behavior of Donald Trump and Vance, and they just seem flat out weird.
A British swimmer claims athletes in the Olympic Village have found worms in their meals. Adam Peaty, a 6-time Games medalist, says the meals at Tokyo and Rio were incredible, while the options at Paris haven't been good enough. To sport and sticking with Olympics, job done on day one for Lisa Carrington. The 5-time gold medalist has won both her heats, moving through to the final with the K4 500 crew and semi-finals with K2 500 partner Alicia Hoskin on Sky Sport.
At the moment, really stoked that we've managed to do the job so far. We still have 4 more days.
New Zealand's laid down the gauntlet at the women's 4,000 metres team pursuit at the cycling velodrome. The Kiwi quartet set the fastest time by more than half a second. They'll face Italy for a place in the gold medal race. The Italians were 3 seconds slower in qualifying. And middle distance runner Maya Ramsden is into the 1,500 metres semi-finals after a superb sprint finish from the Kiwi saw her secure 6th place in her heat. That's News and Sport.
Thank you, Grace. Every 4 years we hear about the food in the Olympic Games village. What's it like this year? Do we know? Have we heard much back?
Yeah, so this swimmer's talking about the worms in the meals. We've heard some, right at the start, they were already saying that they were having to ration a lot of the carbs and proteins because they were running out of eggs, etc. I mean, you've got some of the world's best, you'd have the world's best athletes, essentially. Yeah. You think you'd have, enough protein and carbs because that's essentially what they need. The meal I think he said he was finding worms in was like the fish there. And then you've got just a whole other problems, right, with Paris at the moment, not meaning to bag on it, but the river Seine's causing people to get E. coli. It just looks so rank when you see them jumping in. They found
snails in some of the food as well.
Isn't that what they eat though? Don't catch me out like that.
Good on you, Grace. Okay, cheers.
Duncan Garner, live.
Okay, so global stock markets have been in free fall, although they've just bounced back a little bit, come back overnight. Some saw their biggest sell-off of losses since Black Monday 1987, although, as I say, overnight they've bounced a bit and become more steady. So with all this downward spiral talk, where do we notice it the most? And straight away you look at your KiwiSaver accounts. Has yours fallen? Don't panic, stay firm. Brad Olsen from Infometrics is with us now. G'day, Brad. Nice to have you on.
Good morning.
That's that big fall in the last 24 hours. What's happened overnight? Give us a bit of a lay of the land.
Yeah, I mean, things have definitely improved. I mean, the one we were sort of watching with most concern was the Japanese Nikkei. It fell over 12% on Monday, and everyone was looking at that and going, worse since the 87 stock crash. What's going to happen next? Overnight, sort of as you came through into yesterday and overnight, it's come back up 10%. So it's recovered almost all of, or a fair amount of those losses at least, that, it had been hit by. Some of the US stock markets as well having bounced back, not back to where they were before that plunge, but back a fair way. I mean, I think I saw the likes of some of the tech-heavy stocks up about 2.2% in the last session. So I think that idea that you were just talking about, maybe don't check your KiwiSaver balance or your shares account immediately. Give it a couple of days for that volatility to go through, because realistically the markets have sort of lost their minds the last couple of days. They've probably, to be fair, lost their minds the last couple of months and become far too overvalued. A bit of a reality check coming through the last couple of days, and that's realistic given where the economy is sitting at the moment.
It doesn't take them long to reduce your KiwiSaver balance, does it? I mean, mine went down within hours of the thing falling. I mean, it is so quick to go down and damn long to get back up there. It's amazing how quickly they can drop it.
Oh, totally. And I mean, in a sense, that does also reflect the fact that, people's KiwiSavers will often have a healthy balance of some of those overseas markets in them. Interestingly, the New Zealand figures haven't gone down nearly as much. I think the NZX 50 finished yesterday less than 1% down. So, we've got a very different mix coming through the world. And if you look at sort of some of the drivers of where this correction has come from, that does start to then influence what's happening in the likes of the US markets versus New Zealand. You've had both a pretty weak jobs report coming out of the US and fears around recession coming through. The Japanese central bank has raised interest rates again, at a time when everyone else is talking about interest rate cuts. They've increased theirs. In fact, they increased one interest rate for the first time since December 2008. So, that's quite a shift. But the big one really is that everyone had been betting the house on AI, pouring money after money after money into that sort of stuff. They've looked at the results in the last wee while. They've looked at risk of recession and gone, oh, maybe this wasn't the surefire bet that we made. We better sort of scramble out the other way. So, Again, that dose of reality, I think, hitting a lot of people. And, yes, that is showing up in the numbers and in people's balances.
So your advice to KiwiSavers, I mean, there's more than 2 million of us, don't panic, just write it out?
Well, I think there's a few things here. Firstly, you can't do anything about that drop that's already happened. Like, if you go back in time, maybe, but you can't at the moment. And to be fair, if you shifted, you're only going to lock in that loss. You make absolutely sure that you make negative money. If you wait it out, and we saw this and we've seen this time and time again, for people who are in it for the long run, who don't need their KiwiSaver anytime soon, it will more than likely, over a longer period of time, probably level itself out. You remember back to 2020 when the pandemic was starting, stock markets plunged, and all of a sudden, a couple of months later, everyone was still making more money than they had before. But I think probably the big one, given how much volatility, like I say, the Japanese index going down 12 and then coming back up 10 the next day, I probably wouldn't look at it till the end of the week to even get a starting feel for where it's sitting, because if you look at it today, you'll probably see a slightly better number, because it has actually recovered a bit. So, cooler heads prevail. A little bit of keep calm and carry on, I think, is not the worst idea. If you've got real concerns, if you're looking to use it for retirement soon or whatever it is, go and talk to someone and get some proper advice before making a rash decision yourself.
Yeah, but it worries me too, though, because this has happened once, it can happen again, and I just wonder, with the volatility in the market, perhaps it being overpriced, given asset prices outside the markets. Is it possible it could go again and it could drop 30%? It could drop 10%. I mean, it could drop more than what we've seen in the last 24 hours.
It could. I mean, it always could. There's always that risk that, weird things come around. I mean, we have no idea what's going to happen in the economy today, tomorrow, or the day after. So, there are different events that could come through. But I think at the moment, the thing that the markets it seems like trying to pick is what happens when you do have that weaker economy that's coming through. That's generally what higher interest rates do. But equally, when interest rates start to be cut, you look at the US Federal Reserve is talking about when they're going to do it. Here in New Zealand, there's a lot more. The drum is beating. I think one headline put it this morning for further rates cuts or for rates cuts to begin here. When that happens, that is expected to stimulate a bit more activity. It's just how long does that take and how hard is the hit? So all of that will be priced in by markets. And to be fair, like I say, if you look at some of those numbers the last couple of months, I feel like anyone who sort of kept half an eye, and I'm not saying that everyone should be stock trading second by second, but I feel like a lot of people sort of thought, geez, these numbers do look like it's way overinflated. Maybe you sort of need to get a little bit aware of a potential for correction. So like I say, I think this is a dose of reality hitting.
Very briefly, give me your take on the unemployment numbers, which are due out shortly. Obviously they're going to go up. Do you think that will hit 5%, or does that sort of seem too negative?
I don't think we'll hit 5% today, but I think we'll be getting a lot closer. I mean, at the moment it's 4.3. We're expecting it to increase to 4.7, and that's the broad market consensus across economists is 4.7. I think, all of that is also in line with the fact that we've now seen 3 months of jobs contraction in terms of filled job numbers going down month on month, April, May and June. So that hit is very much coming through. People are worried about their jobs. They're worried about, if they'll have one in the future and how much they'll get paid, and therefore they're closing their wallets a bit more. So that hit is very much coming through at the moment. It is expected to get worse because the labour market always shifts towards the end. But I think also one of the things we're looking at is whatever the number is today, I'm still sort of waiting for next week when we hear from the Reserve Bank to give us a much clearer steer on what they think is happening next, because there's a lot of conjecture out there in the market. 3 banks, I think, are picking cuts the official cash rate next week. I think that's probably too early, but I just don't know. No one quite understands what the Reserve Bank thinks it's up to at the moment, so we're in a bit of a wait-and-see period.
Yeah. Yep. No, I hear what you're saying. All the best, Brad. Always appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Duncan Garner, live.
And that's the thing about unemployment numbers too, the retrospective. So the current, if you were to go today, what the unemployment rate is, it probably is 5. But this looks backward, you see. It looks back 3 months. So that's how that works. Right, thousands of ambulance officers are going on strike over low pay and highly stressful conditions. They've already been on strike for months, but this new action takes it further with more than 2,500 officers engaging in nationwide withdrawal of labour. So that means they're coming off the road. What exactly does it really mean? And what happens to New Zealanders who might need to be transported or might need their services during this time? First Union's Faye McCann spent years working for St John as an emergency call operator and is with us now. Faye, g'day, nice to see you again. This is where the rubber hits the road, isn't it? It's really serious now. What does it mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So ambulance officers have taken other strike actions. Basically, the government hasn't stepped up, hasn't heard their messages, or has chosen to ignore their messages. So this is kind of what they didn't want to do, but what they're needing to do to get their voices heard.
Illegally, they can do this, so they're given plenty of warning. So this will mean they have these rolling. They come off the road. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so for the first 4 hours of their shift, basically they won't be there. So if they start at 6 a.m, they'll be instead starting at 10 a.m. What's
the minimum service that you will be required to give?
So we still need to meet with St John to discuss the exact minimum requirements, but there is a life-preserving services agreement that we'll go into to make sure that there are still ambulances on the road for New Zealanders, but there will definitely be a reduced number of ambulances.
Man, how do we deal with reduced numbers? I mean, as it is, when it's fully staffed, it's a stretch. And you've already warned us, even when it's fully staffed, it's a stretch.
Yeah.
What's it going to look like? I mean, could New Zealanders die as a result?
We're hoping that New Zealanders won't die as a result.
You're hoping?
Yeah, it's a very difficult position because ambulance officers are saying that there's a need to take action to stop it from happening in the future. So unfortunately, this is the position that we're in, where we need to take action now to show that the government needs to step up and that ambulance officers are serious with their struggles. Is this
the sort of the last thing you want to do, but your hand's been forced, basically?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, ambulance officers are they love the public. They love helping their communities. This is absolutely not what they wanted to do, but they also don't want to see their ambulance service crumble. No,
but it will temporarily crumble because they'll be off the road. So how many, let's say out of 10 ambulances, how many would be off the road?
So we haven't had those discussions with St John yet, but that's what we'll agree between the unions and St John to make sure there's still a safe level of ambulances on the road.
Have the drivers and the medics, have they ever striked like this before? Have we ever had the ambulances off the road in a strike before?
We've been close before, but the government has luckily stepped in. But at this time, I mean, the government has shown that they're not really caring about the issue. So we're hoping that ultimately they'll step in, but we don't have very high hopes.
It must be bad for you guys to do this, to take to this extreme, and you're hoping that the government steps in and sorts it out. But I'm not hearing anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
I look at Shane Reti and I think you're asleep at the wheel, pal, and Luxon is looking for outcomes somewhere else. And I don't see any motivated action here.
Yeah, it's been really disappointing
Isn't it?
to see that the government just doesn't seem to be caring about New Zealanders. They're just choosing to ignore the voices that don't really sit within their narrative. But actually, New Zealanders need an ambulance service.
Hang on a second. I mean, there's some basic things in life that we need. When you have a fire at your house, the fire service turns up, hopefully. When you need the ambulance is there. Even if it takes half an hour, whatever, it's there. It turns up. I would have thought that that's a sort of politics 101 for this, for any government, really. You need your emergency services.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, people don't call an ambulance when they've got other options. People call an ambulance when that is their final option. They need the help.
So from what date you're asking New Zealanders to consider other ways to get to places, and also can you just hang on? If you're asking people to potentially medicate themselves or diagnose themselves because you may not be able to get there, so you're asking them to be a bit careful with the use of you.
Yeah, well, if people still need an ambulance, then absolutely they should still be calling for an ambulance. We're not asking them not to do that. There will still be ambulances available, but they just need to be aware that there might be longer waits on those particular days.
Longer than some of the waits already?
Yeah, unfortunately.
So how long could they be waiting?
The way that it works is it depends on the type of emergency they're having. So those with the life-threatening emergency shouldn't have to wait that long because they'll be prioritised over the other ones. But we are aware that ultimately there will be run-on effects and that will be longer wait times.
Yeah, there'll be some people that simply can't be seen or won't get picked up. Is that correct?
They will be picked up eventually, but again, there will be long wait times, unfortunately.
Right. Why do you think the government's so reluctant to meet with you guys to sit down and do a deal? When was your last pay rise, for instance?
Yeah, it's honestly mind-boggling. I mean, the fact that we haven't met. I know that we spoke before, but St John's still hasn't been able to come back to the table with any percentage increase for staff, and we know that staff are already struggling.
Well, that's because Health New Zealand's not dealing with them, correct? Is that right?
Yeah, so they are part of the funding, and they've said that they're not receiving any additional funding. But I think it's hard for anyone to swallow no percentage increase, especially when we see the cost of living rising.
Well, yeah, no increase is akin to pulling the finger in your face. And why would you do that to the sort of workers that you guys are? At 0%, you're 7% behind to start with.
Yeah, exactly.
When was the last pay rise?
So that would have been 2 years ago.
And that was what? Do you remember?
1 year ago.
1 year ago.
I don't know that exactly.
Okay, so what are you asking for?
So ultimately we're looking for two things. Is ambulance officers need something in the interim to boost them up so that they're not falling behind with the cost of living. But actually what we're looking for is a way that they're not going to keep falling behind. So increasingly they're asked to do further skills out on the road. They're dealing with different struggles. So we need a way to measure what they should actually be paid and to make sure that they're not falling behind with their other health counterparts.
Is the CEO, Peter Brad, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. Is the CEO of St John, is he competent?
There's been a lot of questions about that. Members are certainly asking that question and wanting some action there.
What are you saying?
Well, we have had members reach out to say that they're wanting him to resign. We haven't pushed that message too far yet, but certainly that's where the feelings are.
Resign because he's not up to it, because he can't get the ear of the government, can't get the ear of Health New Zealand. I mean, the whole thing's a debacle.
Yeah, and I mean, every year we're in this position where St John is saying that they don't have enough money, they're a charity, but they're still not wanting to remove that charity status. But a charity doesn't work with an ambulance service.
Are you serious about striking, or is it just a ploy to get them to the table?
100% we're serious about striking, and I imagine that the strike will go through. I don't think that the government's going to step in time.
I appreciate your time on the programme. It's worrying. Appreciate your time. All the best.
Thank you.
And good luck.
Duncan Garner, live.
Yeah, that's really worrying, isn't it? Right. How could you... Kayla, I want to bring you in here. How could you not fund an ambulance service correctly and properly and fully?
Oh, I don't know.
It's mind-boggling, isn't it?
It is absolutely baffling. And there was a comment there on YouTube saying people in America pay thousands if an ambulance turns up on the scene, a sign of things to come. Well, it could be. It actually could be, which is absolutely disgusting in this country. We pride ourselves on, taking care of our people, and we're so lucky to live in New Zealand and all this and that.
Yes.
Oh, okay, but we're not gonna fund the people that actually look after us. Like an example is, my 87-year-old flatmate.
Yeah. Graham.
He had to wait. Yeah, he's in hospital now, and they do a fantastic job. But they absolutely run off their feet. But the ambulance staff, a few months ago when he needed them, he had to wait 12 hours. Yeah,
so that's under normal circumstances. Imagine what it will be like under the striking circumstances. And
exactly.
The question I asked, could people die here?
Oh, 100%.
And
100%. They already are dying.
Well, you know that anyway. But it could be a lot worse, and you heard her say that too.
Oh, it is. It's just absolutely heartbreaking to think that, these people are getting paid absolutely poorly.
This bloody national government, they came in and they told the police they'd look after them and told the ambulance, yeah, we're coming. Because the blind spot of Labour, we're coming. Don't worry, the blind spot, we'll sort it. They haven't done a thing.
Well, they were the government of KPIs, and they've achieved absolutely none of them so far.
Where are these outcomes? Oh, here we go. It's a field day, isn't it?
I know.
Okay, thank you very much. You're Caleb, aren't you? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much, mate. Right. Have you ever fancied swapping a farm from your farm in New Zealand to one that's just across the ditch in Australia, and it's 200,000 hectares. 200,000 hectares farm, massive. It's in remote Queensland, and Donna Wells and her husband John moved to this massive cattle station back in April. And Donna just popped back into the country to see the whānau, and she joins me now from Kirikiri to share her incredible journey. This is incredible, actually. Donna, g'day. Nice to have you on the program. Hi, Duncan. Nice to have you on the program.
Morning, Duncan.
Hey, so why did you do it in the first place? What was the deal?
I don't know. The kids are getting older. It's something my husband's always wanted to do. So we thought, why not? We're still young enough to go. Kids are old enough to leave. And off we went.
Yeah. So tell me, where, I know you should be careful where you want to say where it is, but I mean, how big is this thing compared to what you're on in New Zealand?
So the property we own in New Zealand is 200 acres, and we live basically between Kaihau and Mangamuka.
Yep.
So an hour and a half from Kaitaia.
Yep.
The property we are on in Queensland is 200,000 acres. So yeah, basically a quarter in Northland, I think, is what it works out to be.
Wow, it's massive. Have you been around have you been around the farm over there? Have you been around the whole thing?
We haven't done all of the boundaries. Because of where the station is, it's got hills. So yeah, I'm not loving walking in long grass with snakes, so I'll just stick to the tracks for now.
Yeah. What when you first got there, what did you think? What was the appeal? Did you think, have I made the right or wrong decision?
When we got there, we thought we've cracked it.
Because?
Like, the property's beautiful. It's beautiful because it's like when we got there was grass, there was water. The scenery is breathtaking. It's not New Zealand. Like, it's not, I'm back home at the moment and we've got grass and we've got mud and it's freaking freezing. But over there we've got grass and blue sky and amazing hills and massive flats.
Yeah. So how do you find these people to do it with? I mean, how did you get involved? What's the scheme? I mean, how do you do it?
So this was when we first talked about going, we were going to go and do something completely different, not farming. My husband was on Seek one night looking at all sorts of jobs, and he went, "Hey, what about this one?" And I went, "Oh yeah, that'd be all right." I said, "Just apply." And he goes, "Well, what if I don't get it?" I was like, "Who cares?" So jumped online, applied. He had 3 interviews all over the phone, and that was it. So then it was logistically sorting out what we were doing here, what we were taking, what we'd need to get. It's not all that easy moving from New Zealand to Australia. Australia is quite stringent on their how to get a driver's license, the proof you need, how to get the Medicare, and a lot of it is reliant on having proof of address, which when you don't have an address to go to, or you do have an address, but you're kind of in limbo until you get things sorted. It's quite hard to get the proof they want.
What do your friends think? Have you had your friends over? What do they think?
We haven't had any friends yet. The first lot are due to come in September. We've had my mother-in-law and her husband come over, and they are just in awe. The size of the property, how remote we are, and the scenery.
Do you see people every day, or do you not? Do you just see your husband? I mean, how close are your neighbours?
On the station there is another couple, so my husband sees them generally more than I do. I actually work as a virtual assistant for a company based in New Zealand called Summit Business Solutions. So I'm a lot of the time at home on the internet. So yeah, my husband sees people more than I do.
Yeah. So your closest neighbour would be, you'd have to, chopper to your neighbour, would you? Would you have to fly to your neighbour?
No, our closest neighbour is 14 k's up the driveway. And then from there, the next one's probably, what are they, probably another 15 k's. So they're about 29, 30 k's away.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I mean, as far as Aussie goes. So
this is true.
Yeah. How many cattle do you have on the 200,000 hectares?
200,000 acres. We've got 10,000, about 10,000.
10,000?
Yeah.
And that's all dry stock, right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not milking that many cows.
No. And so how often do you send them to the works and everything? I mean, what's the deal there?
So the station we're on is kind of like the breeding. So we have cows that calve, and then we carry their weaners through.
Right.
And then they go to somewhere else for finishing.
And when you got there, was there the kangaroos visited you, did they?
Yeah. So I think it was our second morning there. We had kangaroos on the lawn. Kookaburras start as soon as the sun starts coming up. We've got cockatoos that squawk like nobody's business. It's pretty cool scenery.
Yeah, I bet it is. And you were going to stay for, a couple of years, but now you're thinking 10?
Well, yeah, we're still undecided. Originally it was 2 years. We were like, right, we'll go, see a bit of Aussie, make some money, and then come home. And now we've kind of got there and gone, this place is pretty cool. We could stay here a lot longer. But yeah, it'll just depend on what happens with the economy and the farm here. And yeah,
where's your supermarket? How far is your supermarket away?
Nearest one is just over 2 hours, about 2 hours 10, 2 hours 15.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, if you're in New Zealand and a remote farm, somewhere in the Hokianga and you had to go to Kaitaia, that'd be the same, similar. Well, you probably wouldn't get there because of the mungamukas.
Well, yeah, no, you can get there. It just takes a really long time. You've got to go through Broadwood and the road's horrendous.
Yeah, it is, yeah. Okay, so you'd recommend it to other New Zealanders? Have a look into it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you've got to give it a try.
Yeah.
It's a whole different world.
God, you've got to love your husband and he's got to love you because he's only two of you, isn't he?
This is true, yes. Yeah, and if there's any disagreements, it's really hard not to talk because there's nobody else.
Yeah. Hey, all the best. It's nice catching up with you, and I don't think we'll see you soon because you're going to be miles away. So, enjoy Australia.
Thanks, Duncan. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome.
We will.
Okay, take care.
Duncan Garner, live.
Yeah, it's just big as belief how big it is, how the size of it. 2 hours away from the supermarket, your neighbour's 15 k's away. Whew.
It's the Slam Dunk.
Okay, so Health Minister Shane Reti is fast becoming, in my view, a serious liability for Christopher Luxon. The list of problems and crises on his watch continues to mount, and he's been utterly ineffective in hosing them down, and even more useless when it comes to resolving them, to be honest. The list is long. The latest debacle involves, of course, the ambulances and the drivers going on strike. Nothing screams frontline services getting cut like ambulance drivers. Take them away, and you're driving yourself to hospital. Or worse, you're dying alone. It's money they want, but National has been hell-bent right across the board of these cuts to public services. It promised it wouldn't affect the front line. This impending strike makes a mockery of National's, frankly, meaningless pledge. And it exposes the public to very real risks, and we heard that this morning, didn't we? Remember, National pledged to fix up the ambulance services when it was in opposition. Strangely, they're now suffering sort of clinical amnesia and can't recall any such promise, can they? And for Reti, it leaves him looking utterly stranded and about as effective as the sacked Broadcasting Minister Melissa Lee, who looked clueless in the face of the media collapsing, didn't she? So I'd argue that Reti is now drawing attention for all the wrong reasons. Sure, health is an awfully tough and complex job. And remember, Jacinda Ardern sacked David Clark when he was health minister during COVID. He just wasn't up to it. The bloke went to the beach, remember, for the walkabout during the lockdown? Yeah. But here's Reti in his list of shame since taking the job. The big one, of course, they forgot to include funding in the budget for the 13 new cancer drugs. Once we reminded them that they were wrong, they came up with 14 different excuses. And in the end, they found the money and they bought the drugs. But the damage was done, you see, and it was crucial. Reti has failed to fix up festering sores. Nurses were trained here, but they haven't been hired due to a hiring freeze, and they're cutting costs. Health New Zealand's tried denying it. Stop digging in. The Waikato nurses were offered jobs, but in the end the job offers were recalled. Just joking, maybe next time, they said. Ultimately, the buck stops with Reti. Where is he? And what on earth has he been doing? It's headline after headline as each day goes by, and an utter mess, and no one appears to be winning. Reti, to me, is on borrowed time. The clock is ticking, and I can't see how he turns it around from here. GPs are screaming out for funding and no longer take on new patients. That's crucial. What's Reti doing about that? Nothing. Primary healthcare is a shambles. GPs' fees are going too high, and we're hugely short of doctors, and people are turning up to hospitals to get sorted, which means ED wait times are depressingly long. What's Reti doing about that? Nothing. Prescription fees have returned, and the government is making smoking cool again by bringing it back, ditching the smoke-free laws. What's Reti doing about that? He's voting for it, supporting it. Vaping's gone next level. National's promised to kick the tyres on vaping, has only seen it kick the tyres down the road. Utterly useless and asleep. What is Reti doing? He's kicking the tyres down the road. Tough former health ministers like Annette King and Tony Ryle all would basically threaten both sides of any health dispute that if they took their issue to the media or out into the public and embarrassed the government, then there'd be no result. So stand by for fire and fury, they'd say, and your issue would never get resolved. The best ministers, they lock it all down before it makes the front pages, or worse, before it becomes the subject of a slam dunk with the editor-in-chief, you see. It worked, and it worked really well. I personally believe that Reti has no idea how to solve these big issues. And that will soon cost Luxon points in the polls if it hasn't already. Reti must go. And Luxon's likely to already know this as well, I reckon. Right.
Duncan Garner, live.
I think that's us. Interesting show today. Bit of feedback coming in too. What's Tauiwi? What's people yelling at Tauiwi? Tauiwi on the feedback. Coalition of nothing, says Cameron. Coalition of nothing. I'm a true blue Kiwi and I couldn't leave this country no matter how bad it gets, says James. Yeah, I feel the same actually as well. Right, that's us. Thanks for tuning in to Duncan Garner, Editor-in-Chief, live with Lester's Oil, the premium New Zealand-made fish oil supplement backed by a study. Support joint, heart and brain health. Use code Duncan for a 10% off. So use that code and you'll get 10% off the product. Abouthealth.co.nz. Take as directed, read the label, About Health Auckland. This will be available as a podcast on Rover shortly. Kayla will get all that sorted out and you can jump on Rover. Thanks for all your feedback and support. I'm Duncan at Rover.nz. To my team, Caleb, Miranda, Forrester and Zarina, thank you guys. We'll do it all again tomorrow. Remember, life's no dress rehearsal. There's no curtain raiser. This is it. So get out there and enjoy it. We live in one of the best countries on the earth. Go get it. Cheers, guys.
That was Duncan Garner, Editor-in-Chief Live. Missed something on the live stream? Text Duncan to 3598 to listen back on the podcast. Want to get in touch? Call 0800 863 293.